Welcome everybody to Mud Flood was Armageddon. The Mud Flood was the Armageddon. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they are willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. Mud Flood, California, founded by the Freemasons. More than they just found it, they made it a state on their own with a vote from, it seems like, a local lodge and where they were finding the gold there at Sutter's Mill and stuff. Hola, Salty. You want to know something? I heard from RJ about 11:30, but today I did a whole video and nobody I knew was at the video. That's the first time anything like that has happened in a long time. I mean, there were still people watching and things like that, but nobody I knew until I saw you just now. And I did get one email and a comment. So, but it was kind of, I was wondering, oh, wow. If I was a dispensationalist, I would think I missed the rapture or something like that. But I know RJ is getting probably the rain. Right now, I have the weather pulled up. Luther is going to get big hailstorm within a few hours. It looks like it's on like the Donkey Kong. And John Charles Fremont ran for president, did so many other things. I need to show this. There it is. My goodness, look at it. Lets you talk, gives you the right to free speech or something like that. It's amazing. What did I get here today? So we saw that medical breakthroughs. Did I not add anything? No, I guess not. I had to because I made a thumbnail, right? There's the chickens. 80 rock crushing machines turned gold bearing rock into flour. Look, there's a picture of the short history of the Bear and Yuba rivers. Was there ever any, hey, let's go pan for gold? Everything from Horace Greeley, Go West, Young Man, to we've seen how they brainwashed people and got them to sign up. Come over here and live in this desert. And they show pictures of a paradise. Well, this is how the miners got the gold. And really, there's gold in human bodies. There's gold at your local sewer treatment plant. Anywhere you want to just dig in the ground, do it. But this is, they have to use mercury and dead things. These guys all thought they were going to be panning for gold, finding their fortune. The government lies to us. On November 13th, 1849, a General Bennett C. Riley, without Washington's approval, called for a state election to ratify the new California state constitution. On December 20th, the California legislature, and hold on to your hats to hear how big they were, voted to seat 2 senators to represent the state in the Senate. And they sent news to Washington, D.C. saying, we're skipping becoming a territory. We're skipping everything. We have declared that we are now a state. Well, the guy, John C. Fremont, that we're going to be looking at, they're a free soil Democrat, known for being a Western hero, regarded as many as an innocent victim of an unjustified court martial. I wonder how many people can get away with that and still be elected a senator. Other candidates were T. Butler King, a Whig, and then a straight up Democrat as opposed to a free soil Democrat. Fremont won the first seat. He got 29 out of 41 votes when they decided, these Freemasons, to make themselves a state. We're the state of California now. How did he get there? You're not going to believe it. He killed all the Indians, man. He was sent there to kill all the Indians. He was a surveyor. Look, I got a little video clip of him pulled up. I was a surveyor, and I had some pretty fancy boots in my time. I don't know if I could use that primitive theodolite. I mean, it doesn't even look like it plunges, so you'd have to do your math twice. It's already a slow process. So the last thing I saved to look at were, I don't know, Box Elder County. There's a lot of those in a lot of counties and a lot of states. Shared child porn. And they asked a question at the end of this thing RJ sent me this morning, or a little bit before noon my time. How can those victimized trust the system when those in power are the very perpetrators of harm? And I ask that of you. You are being victimized. You are being, the government is not on your side. Everything they tell you a lie. Yeah, they haven't raped you, hopefully not yet, and hopefully never, but they would if they could. They'd cook you and eat you if you were on the menu that night by their friends. That's just the way they are. Here's some of John C. Fremont's trips that made him the man, the presidential candidate, the scoundrel who ran off with one of the richest guys in the area's daughter when she was very young, and eloped, got married, came back, got his blessing, and did all of these things, ran for president. That rich man forgave him and propped him up the rest of his, business working years. I guess he got a little drunk and gambling at the end there. But that's John C. Fremont. We're going to be looking at that. But before we do, I want you to see anything missing here. We've talked about these before. There's a word and a number. There's a number and a word. Ditto. Hey, it's 4:30. That means Elohim, in the beginning, God. Abraham. He's had his name changed by Genesis 22. This word doesn't have a number above it. God will provide the lamb himself. God will provide the lamb to himself. God, that's what they want you to say. Read that in there too, like but I had to look it up. So I copied it, looked at, add the L that I left out, and it goes to this word. Like, not good for a man to be left alone, because it's God who provided himself as a sacrifice in the Old Testament. And Freemasons who want to believe in any God, and just take an oath vow, we're going to be your friends or we'll kill you and your family. Not good for man to be alone. 37 different uses. I looked them up just to make sure. I just said, well, what if I just use the word from when we looked at it and it was left out of that Hebrew translation with no number? It does have a number. Here it is. And you can see he was left alone by himself. He provided himself. Himself. That's what these other verses are. That word, or the root, or with the suffix, because it looks like this word can be, as long as you got the bad in it, or, that's what they were looking for. So anyway, let's get into the California thing. PG-13 for all the massacres. Oh, this was happening a few minutes ago. It's a crazy world, isn't it?
Approaching Old River Road. over the next few minutes. Bruce's Firewood, the River Road Walking Track, the Gulf Coast Leak Detection and Pool Company, Magnolia Baptist Church, and Dollar General on Old River Road are potentially in the path of a damaging tornado in Jackson County, Mississippi.
Now, this wasn't even, this is supposed to be a bad weather day, but they weren't calling for this.
Already today, and we are talking about the Gulf Coast, which is kind of crazy. This is not really an area that we were expecting a whole lot of severe weather today, but so far that's been the main talking point. It seems like it's been right down here in southern Mississippi. That's our third tornado, and that's now 2 in just the last 30 minutes. And we honestly might get another tornado warning here soon. We have a large but broad area of rotation near Gateswood in southern Alabama. That's going to be approaching the Florida Panhandle over the next few minutes. We even have a little.
If you're in Mississippi, take cover.
Milton in Florida, so we may get a tornado warning on that at some point down the road. A little bit of broad circulation on that cell. All right, we got more severe weather now ramping up in and around the St. Louis area. We just got a brand new severe thunderstorm warning for Festus, just south of Belleville. That is for damaging winds up to 60 miles per hour and quarter-sized hail. Tracking to the east-northeast. And stay away from windows if you are in this warning.
No, I thought there was, I backed it up to 10-minute mark about to think that we could hear some, there was like an emergency that came on.
Catastrophic situation. A flash flood emergency near Highway 57. This is going to be for Wade.
This is out of nowhere for these people.
Vestry. You are all included in a flash flood emergency.
What's going on now? I'll hit the live button.
Illinois and Indiana, an increasing damaging wind threat for those in central and northern Indiana and eastern Illinois, where damaging winds as high as 90 miles per hour are possible, and there is a low-end chance even for a strong tornado as this moves through eastern Illinois and also in Indiana.
The picture on the bottom right. A few clouds, but for most people, it was like, it's a nice day, and then all of a sudden, hold on, the road is gone. A couple more minutes. This is more intense than I thought.
And then just south of Joliet. Oh, look at this.
Wow, I used to live by that town. See, there's Manuka, and if you go out just a little bit more, the next town over would be Morris, and then straight down. After Coal City is Mazan. And there's a lot of nuclear power plants my dad worked on here. That's why we moved to Illinois from the west. Boo!
Starting to develop south of Joliet.
All right, so this, RJ just got hit about an hour ago with a very bad storm. Or he just missed, barely missed. He might have slipped in between this part.
On the Hazcam
but
in
so that's what's going on.
Spinning just a little bit.
Looks like that's about to
just a little time
be a tornado,
there.
maybe, huh?
Wiggins.
I don't know.
In southern Mississippi.
Maybe we'll keep max velocity up. Here's who we're going to talk about, how the Freemasons took over. Here's how he announced to his rich dad, hey, we're married. What are you going to do?
Purpose.
Father.
But I shall be a laughingstock.
Oh, don't be silly, Father. Why, you'll be the envy of everyone when they hear you have that handsome, dashing young explorer for a son-in-law.
The Pathfinder. You know what? He took her on the first expedition, and because she supposedly had a hobby for taking pictures. They don't talk about some of the stuff I'm going to talk about.
Kit, there's been a crying need for a map of the West, an accurate map, and for an accurate...
They don't know. Anybody that was watching this in 1950, nobody knew the Mudflood was Armageddon. The Golden Age was past. That, they found all those buildings, that everybody is like, oh, San Francisco, and had an earthquake. And then they had look at us, a coming out party. Look at the cabin they were in. These guys knew that the buildings that were in the east were in the west, and they went out there military style and killed them.
Readable description.
Sketches are prepared, sir. Would you like to inspect them?
Would you like to enunciate your words any better?
I see the sketch, dear.
Of course. Preuss did it.
So anyway, he gets to be super famous, runs around with Kit Carson. We'll read about him. Is that Kit right there?
Timber and water good. The soil is fine for grain.
Some of them folks that are choking up that Oregon Trail ought to stop here and give her a try. How long do you figure it'll be before we finish mapping the trail to the Columbia?
Oh, a couple of months, and then all we'll have done is an accurate observation of a much-traveled trail.
Okay, well, what else did you do, Big John?
And a third expedition was projected for the new Captain Fremont. Its unofficial purpose was to see that California, in case of an imminent war with Mexico, did not fall into the hands of the British. By encouraging the...
Wow. And you know, they lived in Mudflood world. The same buildings that we have, they have. The Native Americans had them too. They had royal representatives going to Europe, from what I understand, and the white people didn't like that, worried about a war with Mexico. They were starting in Texas 10 years earlier and still fighting over it. We're taking them over whether they liked it or not. I'm going to jump ahead. Oh, he's famous now.
the public court-martial. Fremont was found guilty. The press and the public were aroused and indignant over the verdict. And even though President Polk pardoned him and had the army...
Can you believe that? It's like, okay, he disobeyed an order because he declared martial law or something. It was just crazy. Oh, wait, this is 49. So this was making himself a state and declaring martial law in California. He was big on martial law and declaring himself the United States representative wherever he went.
Country. I don't want an emancipator in the White House at the cost of Southern rebellion, even if it's my own son-in-law.
Look at the West, Senator. Big, wide, free, new. That's the spirit of America today. The South and slavery are old, worn, and obsolete.
Don't you see, Father?
I think they're trying to make him into the model of a non-racist American hero.
Just as your name already represents the new spirit of the West.
Yeah, because the senator that was his dad and him, he ran for president on the, what was that one party we studied so much? We'll run across it. Men from Sleepy Hollow. I mean, wow, he has such a long page. The Know-Nothings, Republican, native of Georgia, attended the College of Charleston. It's probably that pretty fancy town, South Carolina. Conspiracy RS talks about it. During the Mexican-American War, he was a major. Took control of a portion of Northern California when they were going to make themselves of their own republic, and then declared themselves a state. During this time, he led several massacres against the Native Americans as part of the California genocide. Huh. Maybe we should look at that. I've got so many others pulled up. I just want to, because these guys did it. He did these genocides insubordination after somebody not as aggressive as him gave him an order saying, dude, I outrank you. You can't be doing this. And he said, you know what? Go away. His sentence commuted, reinstated by the President of the United States, settled in California at Monterey. My son learned to speak Tagalog there so he could go be a spy after 9/11. They were going to show those guys we gave up our rights for a reason after 9/11. The Patriot Act is what we needed, not posse comitatus. Now that coffee has not cooled down enough. That was nearly a disaster. All right, so do we have the I guess we have to go through the expeditions here. So, he got married, the daughter, twice. He's 28, she's 16, 17, 16, you know. Manifest destiny. That's their cause. You know what it is. Take over the West. Goodbye, Buffalo. Goodbye, Native Americans. You can't patent the breed of a buffalo. You can only patent the Longhorn and the Angus and the others that you're familiar with, the Kobe's. So let's see. They say he accidentally bumped into Kit Carson. I'm doing a report on Zebulon Pike, but they were sure all about, we got to figure out what's in the West. Got a new table length here I got to get used to. Now, these scientific expeditions of 1842, when he was told to go make maps, he made one on Christmas Eve. He got kind of his most unfamous thing and said he must have been stupid because for some reason he was determined to go to the top of a mountain on Christmas Eve in a snowstorm. Some people think he was taking those instruments up there to take measurements to find out if some other ancient calendars were true, and that if it's a globe, if it's flat, and that's why he risked 10 men's lives, something like that. He did go through Alamosa, where I live now, not Piedmont, Pueblo, town north of us. Pretty big town. It's not a mountain. So he got, wrote a book, made a map. They ordered it. Fremont desired to conquer California for its beauty and its wealth. Huh. That's at a cabinet meeting when they were deciding, what should we do about this? You've been out there, you've looked at it. He's basically saying, conquer it. Let's take it over. It's ours. If it's not ours, then we're not doing our duty to the manifest destiny that God gave us. And he knew what to say at the right time. So that was their deal. Now, here we go. Taking 16 men after, you can trust me or not, he was up there on Christmas Eve, trying to get, for some reason, he was, in any instance, after he gets here at where Sutter's Fort, you ever heard of Sutter's Mill? Same thing, Sacramento Valley, December 9th, not a 49er, but well before that, he was going to stir up enthusiasm, patriotic type enthusiasm among the American settlers there. He promised that if war with Mexico started, he would protect the settlers. He had no right, but he took it among himself and said, I see what's going on around here, and we should, I wonder if these 45 men were the people that voted it in to be in a state. He hooked up, and now they were going, you know what? You're not the head of this government. You're just one of the people that are here. The British are here. You're here. We're here. The Native Americans have been here. So Fremont goes, you know what? I am in charge. They have a 4-day standoff. Fremont and his men go north, bringing about the Sacramento massacre. We'll look at that later along the way. That's just what happens when you shoot the moon at the Mexican army and then run away and kill everybody. Estimates of the casualties vary. United States historians say between 120 and 150 Native Americans were killed, maybe over 175. But eyewitnesses said no, they killed between 600 and 700, and that's probably conservatively. And then they chased other 200 and watched them die drowning in the water. There are no records of any expedition members being killed or even wounded in that massacre. There's other massacres. Kit Carson, he was one of those guys, mounted attackers, later stated it was perfect butchery in his own memoirs because in 1924 there was that resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan. Right after the women get the vote and nobody gets to drink unless they can sneak it. Fremont and his men eventually made their way to Klamath Lake, killing Native Americans on sight as they went. Now, I've been on a lot of road trips with a lot of people, and one of the last things on our agenda was to kill anything or anybody. So the famous Kit Carson and John C. Fremont, a lot more famous back in the 50s and 60s than he is today. I know that. But still, Kit Carson, I mean, they talk about him, and he was just perfect butchery, patting himself on the back in that book, killing people on the way. You know, that's just what they like to do. So they knew that there was a war coming because when you act like that, Mexico's going to fight. On May 8th, Fremont was overtaken by a Gillespie from Washington who gave him copies of dispatches he had previously given to somebody who outranks him. This is when Fremont tells him, go to hell, I am taking over here. Gillespie told Fremont secret instructions from his senator father-in-law justifying aggressive, you know, he basically got, what do they call that? A get out of jail free card? Just go ahead. So on May 9th, the next day, Native Americans ambushed his expedition party in retaliation for the numerous killings. There's no proof of that. He said they did. So they killed 3 of Fremont's party in their sleep, including a Native American. So 2 of them and a Native American who was traveling with Fremont. And he retaliated by going to a nearby village, closest one involved, even though they might not have taken part in the killing of those people. And they call it a massacre. And it probably was. A few weeks later, him and his armed militia go back to California and say, look, we want to start a state. We want to start a war. We are in charge here. Sutter's Fort. They formed the Bear Flag Republic. I'm not skipping that much. It's just boom. It just seemed like a good idea to these guys. So took some prisoners, did this, that, and the other thing. Somebody hearing that California, Fremont and his men, upon hearing that California, Californio, someone born in California, had captured, tortured, and killed and mutilated the body of 2 Osos and held another prisoner. He rode to Sonoma. Anyway, killing was definitely ensued. 3 murdered in cold blood. Who exactly did it? But accounts point to Kit Carson acting at the behest, if not the order, of Fremont. So now they're figuring, if I can be the governor or a senator, I can pardon myself because I've got a free pass from the president and the senator. And now this is where I learned how to swim, where I won my first blue ribbon in swimming. It was Kearney, Arizona. It was named after this guy. He shows up with, really? Dragoons? Based upon Kit Carson's dispatches. You won't need that many. They trust us, and then we kill them. So they all work together on all of this. I'm glad I saved that picture and showed you that there were so few people because, like I said, this is a long one. So he gets away with the court martial. Maybe I have another thing pulled up, but I'm not going to stick too much longer on this. But he sure did a lot. Got 70 square mile parcel of land for, that would have been cheap, 70 square miles in 2023 from this guy. And found a great number of monarch butterflies. We know that they're into that. The land had previously been owned by former California, but now that they're taking over, somebody can just sell it to him for $3,000. This guy pulled out so much gold from that land after his court martial and everything else. Their squatters moved in because, legal issues, but Mexican laborers and washout, he was just rich, acquired large land holdings in San Francisco. And that is a mudflood town. It did it really. I mean, it had a mudflood earthquake and then they rebuilt it. How many times? We don't know. So here is that thing. Finally, after, he's in charge. They decide, what, the French want, the British want it. They ignore that the Russians probably wanted it. Spanish owned it. Royal Native Americans who had kings that worked together with people there for, was this the 1800s, 250 years? They lived there. So he gets, Fremont won the first Senate seat with 29 out of 41 votes. I'm saying they were all Freemasons. That's my speculation. By straws, they fairly drew that Fremont won the shorter Senate term. But they didn't care. It was there. So they sent news to the United States and said, we're a state now. Isn't that what it did? They're basically saying, would they, General Bennett Riley, without Washington's approval, called for a state election to ratify the new California state constitution. Who wrote it? These guys did. The guys that pose with their hand in their vest or their shirts, or what is it? Was there a California territory? Oh, that Y. I only want territory. Territorial evolution. It is the 35th state admitted to the United States, including the process of removing indigenous people. We saw how Fremont took care of that and restricting the leftover 9%, maybe being generous to reservations. So what we're looking for is, when did the United States, claimed by Spain, okay, when did it become a territory? It's certainly not a territory. These were territories, but California just jumped right in. We became a state because of a Compromise of 1850. Yeah, we need California. It's a state. Okay. So with the California genocide, they made themselves a state. This is when did they? It had a series of genocidal massacres, according to Leo Cooper, incidents in which, genocide, like the Rwanda genocides, we're killing them because they're not white, or just at the time, wrong place, wrong time. Indigenous people, soldiers in the 1800s, following the American conquest of California in the Mexican American War and the subsequent influx of American settlers who were basically lied to. Go west, there's just gold on the ground, you'll all be rich, but they end up working for what became the robber barons. As a result, we got the California Gold Rush. Between here, they made it a state, in a powerful state with all those big buildings they found. It's estimated, you know what, these numbers can't, we know it was hundreds, probably of thousands. In up to several thousand, hundreds of thousands, I'm saying, were also starved and worked to death. Forced labor, kidnapping, rape, child separation, and forced displacement weren't something they loved, but it was something they had to do if things were going to work out the way they have. And that, some people want to find a time in our history we were great and go back to it because, well, it's a rough start, but we work out good now, right? Right? Kind of, maybe. If the root is not good, can the plant be good? So anyway, that's they'll never tell you the truth. Since 2000s, since 9/11 2001, probably, historians have characterized the period immediately following the conquest as one in which U.S. miners, farmers, and ranchers got together, engaged in systematic genocide. Because it's true. Nobody likes to, yay, yay, we're the ones who genocide everybody. And if you are white, have been around white in 4 or 5 generations, and that'd take you back to about the 1840s. If you look at it the way I was born in 58, my dad was born in 36, his dad was born in 1889. Yeah, my dad was one of the last of 13. That's the way it used to be. It's not like that anymore. Genocides. We can't go over them all, but we can't have people out there, using fire to enhance specific plant species, optimizing hunting conditions, maintaining open travel routes, unless they work for the United States. The United States of America. Or if you're one of the Españols or Mexicans, Indians that somehow thought these people were telling them the truth and started working with them, special benefits. You look, black people joined the Masons, Native Americans joined the Masons, and they were high up in it because that's how everything got done. They would betray their own because they had that whole death vow thing going. Let's look at topographical engineers. I wonder if there's John C. He's there. George Meade, another Union general, put up all the lighthouses, so they say, built them everywhere, designed the Star Fort of West Point. Of course, it's a Star Point. They chose this to be their headquarters and then claimed they built it. they built these stairs. I'll give them that. And that fence. They did the fence too. And then they could design this tent, because they're so good at it, The Yorktown campaign. It's in the Civil War, not too much of this. So anyway, these guys did it. Fremont worked for them. It was like for the advancement of science. And when we see the Smithsonian, we know they found a castle and decided to say it's because we built this castle. We love America, and there aren't any other castles. There's no more castles. There's no giants. There's nothing. If we find it, we'll kill you. Here's, the core discovery right off the bat. Our history talks about, oh, it was so rough. And, they had the mud flood buildings, and we know it. Unless you believe they jacked them all up after we inhabited it and said, well, we had lived here for 40 years and now we've got to jack up all our major cities because that's what we do in America and nowhere else. Do you know any other countries where they're going like, oh, we're going to jack up our city? No. And if you do, let me in on it because then I wouldn't be giving out bad info anymore. It's all a lie. These guys did it. I wish they had more pictures on it because I bet they'd be good. But this next tab, hold on to your hats, I'm hoping. Uh-oh. Nobody wants to hear about this. But it's just, these were the people that they killed that day on April 5th. Ooh, coming up on a anniversary. All right. And it was because of the manifest destiny, a term coined by John O'Sullivan. I thought it was Horace Greeley. He must be the one who put it in the paper. Oh, manifest destiny was John L.Q. Sullivan, not John O'Sullivan, the famous bare knuckle boxing champ. Again, this guy, Benton, he's the guy that John C., the Studley hero, but was too poor to get permission to marry his wife, so he had to run off with the 16-year-old, and this guy said, you'll do. He was a prominent leader of the Freemasons, I'm sure, and kept him propped up, getting the gold everywhere with the Native Americans. We've got a plan. It was probably Benton's plan to do that whole make yourself a state. I'm just wondering if this Benton is any relation to Jeremy Benton from England, one of the first open homosexual who still gets his body rolled out to corporate meetings once every 10 years or something like that, because it's in a contract that they, oh, Bloody Island, ooh, yikes, on the Mississippi opposite to St. Louis. There is a reason to believe Benton trafficked and enslaved preteen and young girls. Wow. You gotta be kidding me. And he returned from the war in 1812 with a beautiful slave. That means she was 1/4 black. He lived with her some 2 or 3 years and then probably found another one. Because that's the way they did it. Then he purchased a 12-year-old girl named Phoebe Moore. Sold her when she was 16 to Henry Clay. You want her? You got her. You gotta be kidding me. Who kept her as a concubine and fathered her 2 children. She doesn't get a link? Just pick a town near where somebody got killed because it's like, you killed 100 of us, so we're mad. They kill 3 of them. And they go find the nearest village and kill them all. That's what we're teaching them, a lesson they'll never forget. This guy knows the president. He loves little girls, and he gave me a free pass. I can do whatever I want. We're going to make this a state. Move on. And then I'm going to sell this girl I'm living with to Henry Clay. Very famous in history. People love it. Redding, California. Sacramento River Massacre. We looked at that one. Fremont, again, had taken to killing Americans, Native Americans, that is, on sight. If they see one, they kill them. In his memoirs, the expedition member, Tom Martin, we followed up the Sacramento River, killing plenty of game and the occasional Indian, because they were running out of Indians to kill. Of the latter, we made it a rule to spare none of the men. They call the bucks. Tommy Breckenridge said that the men, open quote, had orders while in camp or on the move to shoot Indians on sight. While on the march, the crack of a rifle and the dying yell of a native was not an unusual occurrence. Close quote. It's that's Breckenridge's memoirs. He wrote them in 1894, going like, yeah, we were not killing them all. We like to kill them all. What we didn't like was missing and wasting a bullet. Wow. So he continued to kill Americans on sight, committed a preemptive attack. That's like, hey, look, if these guys found out we're here to kill them, it's not going to be a complete massacre. Let's go kill them by surprise. You got it. Let's do it. He took over, declared himself governor, became the first senator after he made it a state, ran for the president, fought for the Union because he hated slavery and was a good guy. Well, you saw.
With the end of the Civil War, John Charles Fremont left the Army and turned his attentions to the planning of a railroad to the Pacific. Never an astute businessman, his plan met with failure, and he soon lost everything he had. However, his fortunes were revived when he was appointed to the governorship of the Arizona Territory, where his strong advocacy of scientific irrigation helped bring new life to a hitherto barren land. John Charles Fremont.
I'm studying irrigation right now. One of the places he visited. Do we need to study this massacre? Do we need one more? Let's just skip one. Let's just skip a massacre. Okay, the California Republic, unrecognized breakaway state from Mexico. Okay, the California Republic, like the Republic of Texas, was failed and only set up to become a state later. Claimed to be anti-racist, free state, but was it really? John Fremont was all over it, unrecognized. You know what that means. Breakaway state, succeeded from Mexico, declared it was a state, then made itself, send a letter to, we're in the United States now. And that was exactly what Mr. Benton was waiting for when he broke away from Phoebe, the 12-year-old that sold 4 years later so she could. What? These guys were trading young teenage girls, the leaders of our country. Like in the Bible, in that one time, it says this one guy sold a girl for a bottle of wine and they drank it. That's what cares. Wow. Do not want to be them on that day. Thank you, Father, for your mercy. So the California Republic, unrecognized breakaway, getting a break from the massacring. John C. Fremont, breakaway, Mexican War, declared himself. Who's going to read this but me and you guys listening to it going like, wow, they had a lot of history to tie up in there, and kind of do it. I guess France was in on it, It was one of the ones waiting to be who's going to get California? Man, if the Pio Pico would have known about how the Freemasons were going to jump the gun, because I'm not sure he was all good. He was only trying to defend his own land grant. That's what those Austins and Houstons in Texas got, land grants from Mexico or England or somebody. Somebody gave them the land and said, "You own it now, go get it." So they did. Is this another massacre? No, this is one of those places where John Fremont on Christmas lost 10 men trying to get to the mesa so he could, I think, he wanted to check if the stars were right. I think he was looking, to see, is it really a flat earth or is it a globe? What are we going to have to do? He was the one put in charge. Mission accomplished. He did it. He thought it was virtually impossible, but he did it under the excuse, if I just think we're going to make it, we got to do it. We got to go. And what could they do? I mean, he would kill you. He was the man. He declared martial law more than once. But anyway, he went up here on this place, west of Paradise Road in the Father's National Forest. You really won't be able to see much. Doesn't it give you the option to so let's see, who were some of the perpetrators of the genocides in California? Kit Carson's on the list, John C. Fremont, that stern looking man, he was in on it. It says a year before California's admission to the Union, the United States eventually said, you're in. So I guess they were admitted. John Wynne, Brigadier General of the Union Army. There was another one. We didn't go over the Bloody Island Massacre because Fremont wasn't involved in that one. Serranus, Clinton, Hastings. Don't go let your mind wander towards Bill and Hillary. They are their own mafia. District of Iowa opened a law. He's in on some genocides. And same with Andrew Kelsey, another early American pioneer from the Bartleson Bidwell Party of 41. Let's not eat each other and let's go kill people. Let's do it. Same with John Weller. Genocide. You don't even get your picture, man. Massacre. John Sutter, Freemason, the guy, Swiss immigrant, became a Mexican, later American, found did he get the Sutter's Fort? That's not Sutter's Mill. His employee discovered gold. Okay. John Augustus, also known as Don Juan Sutter, from Swiss, found gold on his land, Looks like a alpine theme. November 11th, he took to Hawaii and probably said, now we own it, on the Columbia. That was a pretty rough deal in 1958 when they said, Your Highness, just sign this. We don't want to have to kill all your subjects. So the Queen of Hawaii signed it, and the United States accepted Hawaii as a state, and she was kept under house arrest until her death, what was it, 17 years or something? Quite a while later. But, at least her last act as a queen was to save a bunch of people's lives. That's always good. And the United States got to have a tourist place. It was a kingdom. It was a kingdom. Was he a Mason? I wonder. They usually don't tell you till deep down in there. Land grant challenge beginning, scholarly study. Let's look at that early life one more time. Married the daughter of a wealthy widow. Well, that's one way to do it when you're 21. That's one way to get ahead. You know, I could have done that a couple of times to heiresses, not the wealthy widows. But I decided no, because they were Roman Catholic. Could have married into the Fleischmann family. These Russian American companies, you know, they didn't have one mention in the rest of those articles we had, but they were there and it was big. And Russia was partners with the United States. They guarded the ports, the big ones, San Francisco and Oakland, during the Civil War. That much I know. So here's the people from Sleepy Hollow. That's where Fremont's from. Tony Taylor, basketball player. I can make your hands clap. Margot Teaver, American poet. Adam Savage, you know him from the Mythbusters. Just a lot of famous people. School of Law, poet. Ted Mack had an amateur hour. Not a lot of people can do that. Famous Catholic priest, probably never raped anybody. A movie star or something. Another TV personality. Not Faye, not Tammy Faye Baker. Another faker wrote under the name Beth Holmes, wrote a novel called The Whipping Boy. Sam, that guy, oh, her, I mean, she's from there. Sleepy Hollow. No way, Pasquale de la Monaco, the American gridiron football coach, is from there. And that guy. And John C. So this is my algorithm. Oh, man, are we almost done? I have one message. I better check it. History of Salt looks good. Yep. If I was going to do that, why wouldn't I go back and see what's happening live?
Intensifying. We got a big hail core as well on the north side of Interstate 64. Ping pong ball sized hail will be possible as it moves east-northeast. Tornado threat is increasing, though, right now, especially on this storm.
Got yourself a Snapple tea there, Max.
Wow. This is from Ben Williams in West Plains, Missouri. Heck of a structure here. Look at that. We have a tilted updraft and everything, too.
I see an art.
In West Plains, Missouri.
I want you guys to take these storms serious.
That is quite the
You
structure.
know, not today if it's not in your area.
And I'm pretty sure he's either looking at the one near
I
Mountain
am not
View.
worried about a tornado, Dave.
I think that's
We got
probably
your
the one he's
window.
looking at near Mountain View.
Check your news. What's been going on?
Right along Highway 41. So, yeah, Florida.
Even from Florida,
in a tornado warning.
Mississippi,
All right, we now have a
Chicago.
tornado warning. This one's a bit more concerning. Back over in Washington
a new tornado
County in
warning
Illinois.
has been issued.
Oh my.
My father and I had a talk some years ago, and he said, I bet that of everything you did in your professional life, walking out of prison with James Richardson was the best day of your life. And I said, Dad, you really know me very well, because that's exactly true.
I will always remember for as long as I live a case that will haunt me for all of my life. It was the case of James Joseph Richardson, a man prosecuted, convicted, and sentenced to death.
She's the girl that
22
burned
years
all the
ago
children
in
alive in
2020.
Waco. That's Janet Reno. She worked for Bill Clinton when he just got in office, and that's the proper word of just. He wanted to make a big statement about there's a new sheriff in town, and so he raided Waco and killed them all. And she backed him up. She was his 8 years. She was the head lawyer of America.
22 or 3 years ago for the poisoning death of his 7 children in Arcadia, Florida.
7 little black children had died. One family had all died, been poisoned to death. And I saw James Richardson. He was a migrant worker, illiterate, very good-looking young man, black, saying to the news media, because they were all there, it was a huge story. 7 little kids in one family all poisoned to death. Nobody knew who did it. He said, the sheriff had better find out who killed my children. And he was obviously crying and angry. I thought, boy, this is South Central Florida.
They blamed him. Now, who is this? This is Mark Lane. Usually when you, like we don't hear about him doing these type of things. It's the first, I wondered if he came up with anything new. This is 7 years old. But usually you put in Mark Lane. And I think I showed him today. Well, so he has passed away 8 years ago. That must have been about the retrospective. But he made the rush to judgment. Oh, so they're not going to. I wanted to show you a picture of him, how they usually see him.
Good afternoon, and welcome to this. Hospital said that the wound in the president's throat was an entrance wound, which would be most inconvenient, of course, for the government's case, since the president had driven past the book.
He was quite the activist, the man who really, within a few years, had already written a book and made a movie and exposed the Warren Commission.
Dramatically.
Yes. May I have the first question?
Yeah.
Would anyone here who is interested in participating in the petition campaign or other activity of what will be shortly, I hope, but
All right, I don't want to. I'd rather.
Saying to the news media, because they were all there, it was a huge story. 7 little kids.
So he went on to get people out of jail. I mean, he's the guy that exposed it.
So, but my brother and I were terrified, so we did the only manly thing possible. We put our sister in front of us and we hid. We were very happy to live where we were living in America.
All right, so he
the kind of peace that makes life on earth worth living.
got his law degree and
the Warren Commission
decided to prove that the Warren Commission was wrong, but he wasn't settled down.
On the ground.
You know, he goes on to talk about this book he wrote, afterwards with the famous Dick Gregory about how bad the war was. And that's when they really started trying to silence him. But he had quite a career. One man.
If they'll take it.
Did he do all this by himself?
5 of the people in this book I knew personally. The 2 Kennedy boys. Malcolm. Medgar Evers. Martin.
Malcolm X.
That's.
He wasn't a fan. But what were the 60s really like if you spoke out against the war and the machine that made money?
Conflict in Vietnam from the 1950s until the 1970s. This involvement also caused nationwide domestic conflict with Americans and their opinions about the war.
Make America great again. Show me the time.
This is a book I wrote called Conversations with Americans.
The United States banned it. Other countries listened. And then it didn't stop there.
Congressman Ryan. Ryan told Harris what happened.
Yeah, he said something about rob and choke and kill and or knife. I don't know. But what he said was he intended to kill him.
And then the congressman saw the knife and realized it was.
So this is Mark Lane at Jonestown, Guyana, where Jim Jones killed or had the. It seems like 700 of the 900 were forced. They murdered these people. And because he had written a book with Dick Gregory, one of the euphoric soldiers who were ready to die for the cause, rather than go back to the United States and have to live in the slums in LA, they started killing everybody. They let him go?
Not a joke. And he struggled, and he said, help, and he pushed the man's hand away a little bit.
And he started to stick into Ryan's chest. And I jumped up and I grabbed his.
Die with dignity, and this was part of the struggle against fascism, the deaths of all of the people there.
People were screaming no. And I heard this last minutes of Jonestown from where I was. And then two guys came over, two black guys with weapons, automatic weapons, pointed at this little hut and said, Charles, Mark, come out. We're all going to die.
It's a beautiful thing to die for what you believe in. It's a great and beautiful thing. And he was smiling, and he seemed almost euphoric and also calm at the same time.
They were in a mode of some kind. They were waiting for this moment. They were following what Jones told them they had to do. So nothing I said reached them until I said, well, listen, at least you will know that when Charles and I go back, we will tell the truth to the world about what happened here. You no doubt note the presumption that we're going to walk out of there. And one of them, from San Francisco, said, I read the book you wrote with Dick Gregory about Martin King. You told the truth to the world about that. Mark, tell the truth to the world about us too. I said, how do I get out of here?
He saw Jonestown different from what I did.
So he let him go. They killed everybody else. And then this whole setup with Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, no way this guy did it. He's Lee Harvey Oswald, except he didn't have the connections. He just had the guy that they could say he had a line of sight.
You saw Dr. King on television every single day. Yes. And according to Mr. McMillan, an author, you boiled, you were galvanized into action, your knuckles turned white, and you said, somebody's got to get him, somebody's got to get him. Is any of that true?
No, that's incorrect.
Here's a book about the assassination of Martin Luther King. It came out under the codename Zorro, which is a title that Dick Gregory liked. I always hated it. Anyway, Zorro was a name they assigned to him, the FBI primarily, and then everybody in government used it when talking about him. So that was the name of the book. It came out later under a different title. This is this latest incarnation, Murder in Memphis, and it's with the book I wrote with Dick Gregory.
We collaborated in books together. He didn't disturb me in the part I was writing. I didn't disturb him, but I never would have done the book because I know that anything I said, he could get the information. Great researcher.
A lot of people's asking us, do we think the book will be a bestseller? I don't know that, but I know it's already a bestseller at the FBI building.
Because they proved he didn't do it. That guy couldn't have done it.
Justice anywhere is a threat.
But it's one thing to be for social justice, but Martin Luther King Jr. had turned against the war. Yeah, I know. He went to some communist meetings. There's a lot of argument about whether we are doing capitalism and what proper, what works or not. Anyway, they talk about how the shot came from here. They had an FBI guy working as his security.
I will continue with all of my might, with all of my energy, and with all of my action to oppose that abominable, evil, unjust war in Vietnam.
The military-industrial complex
Dr.
said,
King's
whoop.
office and supporters, Andy Young, people like that, had booked Dr. King into the Holiday Inn Rivermont. The memorandum written by the FBI at the direction of J. Edgar Hoover went to the news media. It said, why is Dr. King staying at the Holiday Inn Rivermont, famous big hotel owned by white people? He should stay at a place owned by Negroes.
The Lorraine Motel. It was written by J. Edgar Hoover. We have the documents now. Hoover, through blind documents sent to the news media, started the entire campaign to get Dr. King into the Lorraine Motel, not just out of the Holiday Inn Rivermont, but specifically into the Lorraine Motel, which was built, you've seen it, like a shooting gallery.
It was a long balcony. Across the street, there were buildings, bushes there. One could kill him. They couldn't kill him at the Holiday Inn Rivermont that easily once he was in the hotel. And it was the FBI that placed Dr. King there.
Dr. King's security in Memphis was reduced from 12. Now, in the heat of the new controversy, which was developing, the heat of the riot and the hard feelings, it was reduced from 12 to 2.
Mark Lane says that his client, James Earl Ray, had no motive, that Ray is not a racist. Reverend Lawson, incidentally, agrees. Lane said that Ray had been forced by law enforcement officials to enter a plea of guilty.
In fact, if you would ask James Earl Ray today, you say you didn't do it, why should I believe you? His answer would be, as it has been on numerous occasions in the past, you shouldn't believe me. We should have a trial.
Sometime after that, I talked to Ralph Abernathy, who was Dr. King's closest friend. There's a famous picture of everybody pointing the balcony.
Please pay attention to this.
Picture. He said, Mark, I don't.
Because this is a very thing, but as they would say, the only guy not pointing now is the person who pointed first and then kneeled down. The Reverend Ralph Abernathy. I know, he went to a communist meeting too.
I don't want to see it again. I said, do you know everybody in the picture? And he said, yes. I said, I don't think you do. He said, all right, I'll look at the picture. I said, who is that man? He said, I don't know. He was a person who worked for the Memphis Police Department. He knew every place Dr. King was going to go in advance of going there. He's the one that pointed, and that's why everybody pointed. And when people came down later and said to the police who had arrived, shots came from the bushes over there. They paid no attention because this guy, Merrill McCullough, who they knew was one of them, a police officer, said, no, it came from up there. There was no investigation.
So what they do at the bushes the next day? Mark Lane, author and conspiracy theorist.
The next day, the mayor had all the trees and bushes removed, all cut down. So the scene was totally destroyed.
Our investigation leads up.
So James Earl Ray goes to jail. This girl saw him and said, you know, she was put into an insane asylum for 10 years because although she had a drinking problem and so did her common law husband, that's wouldn't be considered unusual today, would it? She could still teach piano in school every day, but they drank.
But you could see the man pretty good.
She said her husband got paid
Considered to be prime suspects in the murder.
to say that it was that guy.
We have witnesses who say that James Earl Ray was not in the boarding house or in the bathroom when the shot was fired.
The witness who could testify that Ray was not the man in the bathroom, said Lawson, was Grace Walden. When King was killed, she lived in the room next to the bathroom from which the shot was fired. It was her common law husband, Charlie Stevens, who told police that he saw Ray run from the bathroom. Grace Walden says Stevens was lying.
Charles Stevens was so drunk he couldn't see his own face, let alone anybody else's.
But you could see the man pretty good.
Yeah.
Was the man James Earl Ray?
No.
Sir, they went to see Grace Stevens.
So they took her to prison for 10 years. Not prison, one of those insane asylums that we heard about that they don't need anymore. Finally, Mark Lane gets on the job with this guy.
Ray, who thought he didn't have a chance in hell of doing anything, wrote to Mark and said, I would like to have you represent me because I really want another chance. I want another trial.
Then the House Select Committee on Assassinations had a hearing, and they called James O'Reilly before him, and I was there representing him. And people all around the country was live on TV. People were watching James O'Reilly testify. I thought he was doing an incredible job. And then they said, now we're going to read an affidavit into the record. Here's a copy for everybody. And it was from a high official from London who claimed he had interviewed James O'Reilly and that Ray had made a full and complete confession.
James Earl Ray was confronted with the committee's.
Needless to say, it turns out to be a total lie. They made it up, and they have to admit, yeah, that guy was a criminal, not really a high-ranking thing, and we're from the CIA, and we're sorry.
Actor's background is now being checked to determine the reliability of what Ray himself called the most damning statement ever made against him.
This is like the most unreliable person in the world, and they're presenting him as a spokesman. He's been fired from the police department.
His lawyer, Mark Lane, has made some allegations against your credibility. Yeah, Ron. What's your reaction to that? Horrified. Obviously, you feel there's no truth in them. So the question of fading, there's no truth. There isn't any truth in them.
It turns out he was a liar.
In the days of McCarthy, nothing like this ever happened. This is the worst attack upon our system of justice and fairness. And your investigators, they knew who he was.
He's a good actor, though, right? The CIA picked the right guy. I mean, didn't he look like, how could you accuse me?
Serious leading criminalist. He's a criminal, and you knew it. And you lied to the American people, and you lied to us. You are a disgrace, and it's an embarrassment, and you're a shame to our nation. And they took a recess. They were awaiting the office.
That's where I have to disagree. He's not ashamed. He was working the system. He was making it work, and then you got in the way.
Questions asked. They took a recess. They came back. They said, well, under the circumstances, we're going to adjourn. I said, Mr. Ray is entitled to make a statement. Yes, he'll be called back in the very near future.
James Earl Ray's lawyer, Mark Lane, is quoted by the Knoxville News Sentinel as saying, in addition, that the House Assassinations Committee has been taken over by the intelligence community.
Wow. So he's passed on now. I mean, the creature from Jekyll Island, W. Griffith, he gets a lot of press. There's a lot of conspiracy people. Is he a real deal? I know I am a real deal. I don't know about him, but I know that they can bury things.
It's not hopeless. He said it is hopeless. They all died. He wasn't crying for himself.
So that's the 7. This guy spent 21 years in prison, accused of murdering his children because the police said, "You don't tell me what I have to do." Inward.
Who's paraplegic and a black guy as her team. And already I thought, well, this is a little unusual to start out with.
Hey, look, there's Janet Reno. Sorry we put you in jail for over 2 decades, blamed you for killing your 7 children. Wish we knew who did it.
News on it, whatever. But he came back out and he said to James and all of us that he's deliberated, he's thought this over, and he has dismissed the charges against Mr. Richardson. Mr. Richardson, you're free to go. People were hysterical with joy.
So I'm going to be looking into Zebulon Pike. I wonder if he's, I've got to do a paper on him, 10 pages, something like that. Famous as being an opponent of the Salem witchcraft prosecutions. That's his father, following the news. I know the book I have that I'm supposed to concentrate on is called Citizen Explorer, not the Pathfinder, but I just don't know. How much can we? I mean, we know practically everything's a lie. And he died young, you know. He became famous and then went back out and got killed. See, he had his papers confiscated. That was a big deal. Got turned in by his own general, they found out later. There's the most important man in Colorado, the man that found the Confederate gold. He was assigned to find the Confederate gold, and he did. Some people like myself, well, gee whiz, I am the guy that claims he kept most of it, just turned in the paper and the stocks and, enough to keep the government running. And he kept the gold and went out and founded Colorado Springs and railroads, short track railroads. And read the same 4 Bible verses I read this morning. Luke 13:34. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, who kills the prophets and stones those sent to her. How often I have longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were unwilling. This is Isaiah 10:14. My hand reaches as into a nest to seize the wealth of the nations. Like one gathering abandoned eggs, I gather all the earth. No wing fluttered, no beak opened or chirped. Does an axe raise itself above the one who swings it? Does a saw boast over him who saws with it? Basically, the created things should not. He will tend his flock like a shepherd. He will gather the lambs in his arms. He will carry them in his bosom and gently lead those that are with young. Matthew 27:37, you've heard this. How often was he sent to the city that kills the prophets, stones those who are sent to her? But he would have gathered them like a hen gathers her chicks under the wings, but you would not. Where is that in the Bible, Let's look up Genesis 17:18. Lord appeared. Must be 19. I'm going to get to where I want to go. All right. This is how I got there. Isaac, old enough to carry the wood, and said, my father, here I am, my son. He said, behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Now, to understand this in context, Abraham would not have had a son because his wife and him were like 100 or pushing 100, and they never had any children. But God said, no, through a son that will be born to you next year, all nations will be blessed. You wouldn't have this son unless he believed in that God who he had made a covenant. And God told him, take up there and sacrifice your son, your only son, and it'll be okay. But that's what you have to do. And so Abraham was going to do it. He wasn't thrilled, I'm sure. Abraham had no idea what was going on. But he said, God will provide for himself the lamb to be the sacrifice, the offering. He will provide himself. Now it says for himself. I think I proved earlier, I started with this and I'm going to go over it again right now because it's important to know that they're the ones. I feel I'm suppressed not only by the algorithm, but by other Christians who don't like me, saying that there's no Trinity. But that's not the verse. What was it, 18? Wow. I had it rolling. It was chapter 22. Offer your son, your only son. So seeing you've not withheld him, so God will provide himself. It was verse 8. Now, looking at the interlinear in that, we see what's missing to himself. No, God provided himself, which is why at the start of the show, I went through all of the trouble of highlighting this word and just saying, well, wow, they show this word in other places. Why don't they show it there? Because these things are always about, it's alone, is he himself. God provided himself. That's why he can be called the everlasting Father, the eternal God, because there was a spirit world. And then it became a world where the spirit angels were told, no, you're going to be worshiping God in the flesh. And God manifest himself in the flesh. And here we are. And I just showed you all of this thing is about our history and everything else. And I do feel like I'm kind of like a Mark Lane guy that's never going to be remembered as somebody who wrote the Pulitzer Prize winning historian, because I don't even edit my videos. I just go at it, and they're not very polished, and I'm not that polished anymore. Thank you guys for sticking around. Thank you for listening. I hope that you pray about it, apply these things to your life, and see, what's true. I myself and my friends are never going to tell you anything else than the theology and the reasons, because we believe the Mudflood was the Armageddon. It's flat Earth nation. The golden age is past. That started the 1,000 years, that relative peace where people came out of their little hidey holes, and unfortunately the wheat and the tares grew together. By the end of the 1,000 years, they had this whole thing set up where some Freemasons would find this, that, and the other thing. And then at the end of the 1,000 years, Satan loose. The reaping happened. Put in your sickle and reap. Those people during that 1,000 years, the wheat and the tares were separated, like the sheep and the goats will be at the great white throne that we're waiting for. That's why me and my friends will never tell you anything else. We know the Bible teaches some people are 1 called, 2 chosen, 3 faithful, because they're elect, predestined, known before the foundation of the earth, that somebody's going to have to be there and be lifting that veil and say, no, here's a new way to look at it for a narrow road. You're on it, Lord willing. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen. Nakamain. Adios.